Assalamu alaikum, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. So, the reason why I've released a number of episodes on fiqh without ethics is because, as someone who studied Islamic law, and I studied it in the UK, and I also studied Islamic law in the College of the Sharia in al-Azhar High School and University in Egypt, and I also studied it privately with some scholars, especially scholars of the Maliki madhab. I studied Maliki fiqh, comparative fiqh. I studied usul al-fiqh as well, obviously from a Sunni perspective, but also familiarized myself a little bit with fiqh in Shia Islam. But one of the things that I've noticed when I came back to the UK, I came back many years ago, but is a number of Muslims do not understand fiqh, and they often are unaware of the nuances and the subtleties and the complex of fiqh. So when a scholar, a faqih, a jurist is given a ruling, he is given a ruling based on his understanding of what he believes the divine law or the divine will is in this particular situation. And the different schools of law, the different madhabs, they have different methodologies. So naturally, because they have different methodologies in terms of how they rank, um, not only like in terms of the priority of do you take an authentic hadith that's a single chain hadith over the people of Medina, or do you look at qiyas? There's different methodology ultimately amongst the different schools of law, and that's why naturally you have difference of opinion amongst the scholars. And this is something that even happened during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in one particular hadith that's reported in Al-Bukhari, when the Prophet told some of the companions that do not pray Asr until you reach Banu Qurayza. That was the Prophet's peace be upon him's instruction. Now, whilst they were en route to Banu Qurayza, Asr time had come, so they're running a bit late. So some of the companions understood the Prophet's, they took the Prophet's instruction literally, as in we cannot pray Asr until we get to Banu Qurayza. So even though Asr time has come in, he only said that to encourage us to so we can go faster. Um, so again, some of them understood that to mean that we cannot pray Asr until we get to Banu Qurayza, because if we pray it now without when we're not in Banu Qurayza, we've gone against what the Prophet peace be upon him said. And the other group of companions, they said, no, the Prophet said that to encourage us to get there quicker. And they said, we understand and we know the importance as Muslims, we should pray when the prayer time comes in. So they prayed it on the way. They didn't pray at Banu Qurayza. So you had two groups of companions, one who prayed Asr, who prayed the afternoon prayer at Banu Qurayza, where the Prophet told them to, and others they understood as the Prophet was encouraging them to get there quick and to pray Asr there. So they prayed it before they got to Banu Qurayza because they were running late. And when they eventually saw the Prophet, peace be upon him, they told them what had happened, and the Prophet didn't rebuke any of them. He didn't say any of them was right or any of them was wrong. So that is an example. This is an example which scholars use where if you have legitimate interpretation, like they both have the evidences. One took the instruction of the prophets was like literally. Others they speculated and thought this was what the prophet's intended meaning was that no, we need to get to do not pray Asr until you get to Ben Qurayza, and he was saying that so that we can get there quickly. Because their intention obviously was sincere and they both had legitimate reason for why they did what they did. That's why scholars use that as evidence to say that when a legitimate qualified scholar has an opinion based on obviously the Quran and the Sunnah, even though their conclusions may be different, one cannot say that one opinion is necessarily correct and one opinion is necessarily incorrect, because one of them may be correct, one of them obviously may be incorrect, but only Allah knows ultimately. And as Muslims, where there are legitimate, valid differences of opinion among scholars, we need to respect that. And that's why, again, like I said, you have when we're speaking about Islamic law, there are a number of matters where there are differences of opinion. Now, what you find nowadays is many Muslims, especially those who are overzealous or those who maybe have studied very limited fiqh, limited Islamic law, or they've only studied with one particular madhab, one particular school of law, they will think all of the conclusions in that particular school of law encompasses everything what Islamic law is about. And that's not necessarily the case. in many issues, you have different Islamic laws, not one particular law. So that's why, again, it's important that one understands the nuances. And I think oftentimes, especially in relation to male-female relationships, especially in relation to women, you find a number of Muslims, especially those who've maybe studied in Saudi Arabia or very conservative cultures, like maybe in India, they often adopt a very restrictive and harsh a restrictive view towards women. And that may be from their culture, it may be from their own personal upbringing or understanding. It may be that they cherry pick. So you find some people that will cherry pick certain fatwa, certain rulings to essentially marginalize women or to kind of control women. And again, I'm not saying that these rulings do not exist. I don't necessarily agree with all of these rulings, but these are rulings that are in our tradition. There are some misogynistic fatwas. There are some chauvinistic or anti-women, you could say, fatwas. There are also some fatwas that are racist that discourage or that say that like an Arab shouldn't marry a non-Arab or an Arab shouldn't marry a black person. There are fatwas that I've seen when I was studying that of many scholars that have said this in the past. So again, but if one wants to pick and choose, I don't agree with those fatwas, by the way, but one can easily pick and choose certain fatwas to give the impression that Islam oppresses women, which I don't believe Islam does. You could also pick and choose certain fatwas to give the impression that every single Muslim woman needs to wear niqab. That's an opinion. I don't personally agree with that or believe that it's accurate, but again, that's an opinion. So you can pick a fatwa that every woman needs to wear niqab. Muslim women shouldn't leave their house unless they have unless they have unless it's for necessity. Muslim women shouldn't go to the mosque. Muslim women shouldn't speak because their voice is an aura. Muslim women should only wear black because other colors um may entice men. So you can have all of these fatwas, like I said, that are quite debilitating and maybe aim to silence women. But according to some scholars, that's perfectly permissible or valid. But what some people do, they'll just highlight all of the harsh opinions and they'll make it out like that is the only opinion or that is what Islam says. And that's an A opinion amongst many. So I'm just saying that to say, because like I said, a number of people, and there are a number of even Muslim scholars and preachers of today who they would only preach or talk about the harsh legal rulings or legal opinions, and they'll make it out like this is what all of the scholars said, this is what Islam says, this is what the Sharia says, and that's not necessarily the case. Again, I'll read you some more like legal opinions. Some of them are quite problematic, but it's perpetuated as if this is the Islamic ruling when this is really maybe a particular scholar's opinion. But I would argue that it's not the correct opinion or it's not the correct Islamic ruling. So um, for example, in the Shafi'i madhab, there are some Shafi'i scholars who said that only married women can wear henna. If a woman is unmarried, she's not allowed to wear henna. Again, they've got their reason for it, but that's just an example. In the Shafi'i madhab as well, a number of Shafi'i scholars, they encourage Muslim women to wear gloves because if they don't wear gloves and they touch a man, even without lust, even without desire, then it can break the wudu. And that was something that when I was in Egypt, I came across. I thought it was quite strange at first, but when I understood the reasoning for it, I don't agree with that because I followed the Maliki madhab in that particular ruling, but that is an interpretation. They have some evidence for that. There are some scholars who advocated and promoted female circumcision, especially the cutting of the external clitoris. Again, I don't agree with that interpretation, but that is something that is within our books. There are some scholars that said that practice female circumcision because it will help reduce the desire of a woman, and then she won't be promiscuous and committing fornication like non-Muslim women. You have many Muslim scholars such as Ibn Taymiyyah who said that. Again, I don't agree with that particular fatwa, but it is in our books. You have some scholars who said that if a woman is being abused by a husband, that's not a right for her to seek a divorce. And if she does divorce, Allah will curse her. And all of these views, again, I don't agree with that because even the Prophet, peace be upon him, he facilitated divorce for a woman who was in abusive relationship when she came to complain. And he spoke actively, regularly against domestic violence. But you do have many later day scholars who say that if a woman is being abused, that is not a right for her to seek a divorce. You have some scholars who said that a husband can force his wife in the bedroom, that there's no such thing as marital rape. Again, I don't agree with that view, but unfortunately, you do find that especially among some scholars of the Hanafi madhab, of the Hanafi school of law. You also have some scholars who said like who, when interpreting the Quran, have said that women are like stupid and women are deficient like children. You've so unfortunately you do find a lot of misogynistic, chauvinistic, and somewhat very excessive control and anti-women rhetoric within our tradition. And it's not surprising that people who have studied these texts and these views, then after when they maybe come to the West, they become a preacher or a da'i or a scholar, what have you, they still have this understanding about women, and it can be also very problematic. So that's why I just wanted to talk about, and that's why I'm releasing these series of videos about fiqh without ethics, because fiqh is, like I said, it's a ruling which is a human endeavor by a qualified jurist where he's trying to extract the divine law in a particular regard. He might be right, he might be wrong. But then also it's important that sometimes when a scholar gives a fatwa, a legal ruling, that might be applicable for that particular time and period for, or that particular person. It doesn't necessarily mean it's universal or it's binding upon everyone. And this is some of the nuances that a lot of Muslims need to realize, that a scholar may give a fatwa in Saudi Arabia, for example. That doesn't necessarily mean it applies to someone in the UK or the US, or someone in the UK. They might receive a fatwa that says one thing, then another person in the same city might receive another fatwa that says like the opposite because of the person's circumstances. So again, it's important that as Muslims we appreciate our heritage of Islamic law, but not to look at these classical books, especially in relation to male-female relationships, because their views of women was arguably quite different to our views of women, where they viewed marriage as akin to slavery. And you see that in a lot of the books, that being married is similar to having a female slave. And they looked at the marriage contract as, and this is particularly in the Hanafi madhab and also some parts of the Maliki madhab, that when you pay the mahar, the dowry or the bridal gift, it is like an exchange of, it's like you're paying for the woman's sexual access, paying for her genitalia. And that's how they kind of describe the marital contract. And that's what you find in the legal books. But in terms of understanding like the ethical principles about love should be based on, I mean, marriage should be based on love and mercy, as explained in the Quran, and there should be tranquility. There should be between the couple. This you would generally find outside of the fiqh books. The fiqh books are quite cut and dry because they're speaking again from a legalistic perspective. But in terms of how to cultivate a loving and healthy marital relationship, which is similar to like the relationships that the Prophet encouraged or the Prophet was in, you will find that in other books of Islamic sciences, like the books of literature, like the Sirah, the biography of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the books of erotology and erotic literature and what have you. So I'm just saying that to say, because again, I think a number of people, they think that fiqh in and of itself is devoid of emotion. They think that fiqh discriminates against women. And I don't think fiqh in of itself is inherently chauvinistic or misogynistic or has a bias towards women. Well, there are definitely some scholars who have a male bias or who have a cultural bias when they're given their rulings. I think that's quite clear. To pretend that scholars are completely objective and they don't have no biases, that's clearly not the case. They are human beings. They have their own views and their own prejudices, like many of us. But I believe that they are trying to the best of their ability to get to the right ruling. But I just wanted to kind of give that as a preamble into some of the different videos I will be releasing. I have releases in relation to the whole idea of fiqh without ethics, because I think in order for fiqh to be really good fiqh, it needs to have ethics. It needs to have morality. So you can't take legal rulings that's devoid of morality, devoid of ethics, and apply it to issues such as marriage, marrying a woman with the intention of divorce, taking a second wife secretly, the whole idea of misyara marriage, marrying a woman who is like a single mother or divorced until you find your quote unquote traditional virgin wife. All of these problematic issues, which are unfortunately quite prevalent, not only in Muslim communities, but also among so-called practicing Muslims and also amongst some religious leaders. I wanted to kind of talk about it because I've seen a number of abuse of the tradition and of Muslim women, unfortunately, especially by those who know better. Things that even when I wasn't practicing, I wouldn't have even thought about on none of my non-Muslim or Muslim friends. But unfortunately, you do find a number of these abuses that do take place in our community. So it's important that we speak out against it. And again, so knowledge is very important in that regard because, like Ibn al-Qayyim and Jawziyah said, that it's like someone who hasn't got any knowledge, someone can bring them gold and they'll believe that it is, someone can bring them dirt, sorry, and they'll believe that it is gold. So that's why knowledge is important because it will empower you and help you to not only protect yourself, but protect those around you. So again, that's all for now. I look forward to speaking to you at the next course. And if you want to know more, you can check out eritologyinstitute.com, eritologyinstitute.com. We have online courses on Islamic sexology and African intimacy. Assalamu alaikum.